Welcome to the council meeting in the council chambers. It's Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. Call to order. Roll call. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment period, correspondence. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition of me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Our first speaker is Melissa. Oh, I should have asked you how to pronounce your last name. Wisdar, if you'd like to come up to the podium, and would you state your name and address? And you get 5 minutes to speak.
Bringing up my notes, sorry.
I think it's on, right? Sounds like it.
Oh yeah, it's
Name is Melissa Guazda. And we are talking about the pollinators. We're Marshfield monarchs. Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you to Brian Giles for the invitation to speak here this evening on behalf of our pollinator friends. My husband, Jim, and myself are known as Marshfield monarchs. For the last 7 years, we made it our mission to do something about the decline of the monarch butterfly, for these iconic beauties have plummeted by 80% in the last 20 years. Since starting this journey in 2016, we've successfully rescued, raised, and released almost 14,000 monarch butterflies by scouring ditches, fields, public, private land for milkweed to locate monarch eggs and larvae. We've spent countless hours in research to ensure that we are doing absolutely everything we can to maintain healthy butterflies. Over the years, we've done several interviews, both on and off television, including one with John McGivern for the show Around the Corner, on the importance of the monarch. For 2 years, we created and maintained a butterfly exhibit at Wildwood Zoo, taught countless classes for groups such as 4-H, had an educational booth set up at local events such as Hub City Days and the Fair, and have done butterfly releases for Maple Fall Fest for the last 3 years. Our efforts to bring awareness of the importance of this amazing pollinator have been operous. We even welcome people to our home to see and be able to release the monarchs or allow our monarchs to be released at special and private events such as funerals or weddings. Perhaps the biggest and most important thing we do is grow and maintain pollinator habitats, not just at our home, but with the help of Marshfield Utilities and wastewater management. We are allowed permission to build these habitats on their land as well. Without the help of these companies, we'd be very limited on space, as more and more land where natural habitats are being destroyed every year to mostly construction for new developments. And this is where we need help.
Thank you, Melissa. And our second speaker, Jim Wazda. Yep. We'll start you with your name and address, please.
My name and address?
Yes, sir.
My name is James Guazda. My address is 1617 North Apple Avenue, Marshfield, Wisconsin. Milkweed is the only host plant for the monarch caterpillar. In the last 7 years of tracking, collecting eggs, and observing high monarch traffic, we have made many observations. Our most concerning observation is that every year, at least one substantial area of milkweed has been developed or otherwise dug up and a thriving milkweed eradicated. Examples include the new Quick Trip on McMillan and Highway 13, once thriving with insect life, abundant milkweed and native plants and weeds. Stop Construction's new drop yard on Mallard Avenue, which had a major milkweed root system that we fed at least 7,000 of our monarchs alone with. CFR's new machine shop, a company that I even work for, on Mallard Avenue, and the housing development on Trout Road. The list grows every year. These properties were purchased privately and not associated with the city, but these areas were in fact lost. We develop every year, and it's nothing new, as that's how our communities thrive and grow. As we know, humans are not the only species that live in and make up a community. Approximately 400 million bugs and insects live on an undeveloped acre of land. Every time we develop and grow, we jeopardize their ecosystem. There are ways we can help restore and redevelop some of these ecosystems by proactive action from and support from the community. 78% of U.S. soil is privately owned. 22% is federally owned or protected. There are 40 million acres of just lawns that have little beneficial value, and there are 20 million acres of national parks. Marshfield has at least 17 parks, making up over 295 acres, and only half of those parks showcase native plant gardens. Even our small parks still have plenty of room for pollinator improvement. Proper pollinator habitats have little to no maintenance. I want to mention 3 things our city can do to help the pollinator ecosystem in our city. Number 1, ensure wildlife site protection. Number 2, review parks management and look for opportunities to manage land for pollinators at parks and detention ponds. Review pesticide policy and cease use of neonicotinoids if applicable, and reduce the use of other pesticides. What does Marshfield Monarch request personally? We have located a few city-owned areas that can most definitely benefit more pollinators and wildlife in general, with proper plant additions and management. These areas are described by using the Marshfield GIS IDs and are as follows. ID number 7093B, 0.60 acre on Mallard Avenue. ID number 05532B, 4.71 acre on Auburn Avenue. And most importantly, ID 33-07359, which is 1.79 acre East 34th Detention Basin, along with the western side of ID number 33-07358 on 34th Street. These areas, Marshfield Monarchs can begin to develop into more beneficial areas for a biodiverse habitat than they already are. Planting and restoring native plants is important to our ecosystem because our local pollinators and other wildlife depend on it, and some even evolved by it. The energy of life does not exist without something eating or feeding off of a plant first, and that is the real importance of restoring habitats and putting back some of what has been lost. We appreciate the time we've been given to speak, and we hope that to put the importance into perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you too, Melissa. Heather Holland? Please state your name and address.
My name is Heather Holland. I live on 1701 North Chestnut, apartment 205, Marshfield. I'm here today because I'm working towards my citizenship of the Community Merit Badge, which requires that you attend a school board meeting, city council meeting, etc. I'm really excited because this is my first time coming to a council meeting at the local level. I've already earned my Citizenship of the Nation Merit Badge. I am also an athlete leader for Special Olympics Wisconsin, and I currently serve Region 2, which goes all the way up from Rhinelander, Wausau, Marshfield, Rapids, etc. And I've already had the honor of speaking at Hill Days last year in our nation's capital, where I spoke with Senator Baldwin, Ron Johnson, and all the other representatives for the great state of Wisconsin. Thank you so much for this opportunity to just see you guys in action.
Thank you, Heather. Any other citizens' comments? Any other citizens' comments? Third time's a charm. Thank you. And thank you all three for making your comments this evening. Item E, approval of minutes, February 27th, 2024. We have a motion by Alderman Werman, second by Alderman Varsho. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Staff updates. Item F.
Just have one. You see Carrie at the podium. She was part of a group that went down to Wisconsin Rapids last week for what was an outstanding Wood County Housing Summit, and she's got a little report on some of the things we learned. Carrie?
I do. So I'm just going to take a minute here and share my screen. You see that? Okay. Thank you, Mayor T-Strike and Common Council members. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today on this. Councilman Stauber had a suggestion to kind of bring back some of the information, and it was a great one. So I'm going to just provide a little bit of context to start. And some of this may be review for you, but I just wanted to provide this. So one of the best articles I think on Wisconsin housing is an article that came out in 2019 by Kurt Paulson out of UW-Madison. And he just did a really great job of summarizing the need for workforce housing across the state. So the main causes that he noted were lack of supply, rising construction costs, and outdated regulations, primarily zoning and land use regulations. And the results of that being rising prices, decreasing homeownership, and then decreased affordability with housing. In 2021, Wood County was very proactive with a variety of issues and put together the Wood County Ready Plan. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, maybe some of you helped develop it. And it created very specific goals for economic development throughout Wood County. And they have all, subsequently to that, an implementation component is that they have created this dashboard that is centered around a few issues, one of them being housing. And I will provide links for all of you tomorrow on this, but this is kind of the context. So part of the housing component of this was to come up with a housing task force that's based in Wood County. And that task force is the group that put the Housing Summit together, just for that context. So the Housing Summit was last week. It was held at Mid-State Technical College. There were quite a lot of attendees. We had great representation from Marshfield. We had elected officials, city officials, the Main Street coordinator. We had a very good turnout to represent the city of Marshfield. Wood County Planning and Zoning staff attended, Wood County Health Department staff, and village and town staff throughout the county and various stakeholders. So the topics were the current state of housing in Wood County and central Wisconsin, regional and state perspectives, and then there were some specific kind of success stories throughout the state. Sheboygan County Housing Solutions and Founders Point Subdivision, the mayor came and spoke on that. Other community-based solutions, there was a legislative panel, and then there was kind of this wrap-up that was creating context for action. So North Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission and Realtor Brian Spranger spoke about a lot of things that a lot of you already know. We have low inventory right now and low housing stock, particularly in specific ranges being low and mid. And then Melinda Osterberg from WEDC spoke about some of the success stories they've had in existing structures and converting those to multifamily. And there are specific examples in Stevens Point and Wausau that she talked about. And this is the landmark building in Wausau. The mayor from Sheboygan Falls spoke about a couple subdivisions, one that they've nearly completed, if I remember right, and one that's undergoing construction. They were able to partner with the local economic development corp on some down payment assistance, some TIF dollars that helped complete that project. There was a West Cap affordable housing project that incorporated solar, and they were able to offset all of the utility costs in an affordable housing project. Amherst has recently incorporated ADUs permitted by right into their zoning code. And then Washington County has a very successful next generation housing program that incorporates multiple things, some of them being down payment assistance, startup funds for local governments, and then private builder offsets. So the wrap-up was a legislative panel with Senator Teston, Representatives Krug and Rosar, that talked about kind of a multitude of options and policies that they're looking at changing throughout the state. We had small groups that kind of brainstormed on some key questions, and the goal was just to kind of continue the conversation and make connections and look at how we can move the needle on housing. And I just also wanted to note that Wood County is undergoing a comprehensive plan and housing study update. They're going to use the update for their Chapter 3 housing in their new comprehensive plan. And they have a survey going on right now through the 29th. So I'll send a link to that also, and they really wanted to get that out there. So, and I'm available for questions if anyone has questions, but just a quick update.
I do have one question.
Go ahead. Alderman Stauber.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hit my button. Thanks for the presentation and recap. Much appreciated. I wasn't able to attend. How would you compare, I'm trying to bring it home to Marshfield, and how would you compare the need for economic development in Marshfield and the need for housing, or are they kind of tied together?
I think tied together. I mean, I think in the last few years it's become, I think several years ago, housing was seen very separate. And I think now it's pretty well acknowledged that it's a key economic development issue. And, you know, specific employers come and they say, are you able to accommodate, 80 workers, 90 workers? And I hear from a lot of other communities too, they're just kind of crossing their fingers and saying yes, when potential employers are asking that. But having housing is a key component of being able to accommodate that, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for that update. Yes, and it was a great day. Absolutely. Any other staff updates, Steve?
No, none that I'm aware of.
Thank you. Item G, my comments. Good evening again, everyone. You will notice signs around town for school board candidates and aldermen who have more than one candidate. 2 aldermen, Mike O'Reilly and Ed Wagner, and myself running for mayor, have signs out even though we are running uncontested. We're doing this to remind people to vote and that we will be on the ballot. So remember, if you don't vote before, you can vote here at City Hall, or if you can want to get an absentee ballot, otherwise April 2nd from 7 in the morning till 8 at night. Find where you vote, and hope to see you all there, and thank you. Item H, council comments. Alderman Giles.
Yes, thank you. Although I see that they did have to take off, I just still wanted to take the time to thank Jim and Melissa for coming in to speak, and for all the great information, and especially for all that they do in their endeavor of working to restore monarch habitats and, keep, excuse me, and preserve monarchs for future generations, and most importantly, to preserve them as pollinators. I think some information I had included in the upcoming resolution on the consent agenda was 1/3 of all flowering plants in the world and 30% of all food-bearing crops are due to pollinators. So it's definitely an important endeavor, and I thank them for what they do.
And Alderman Giles, thank you for bringing them forward and giving us that information. Who knew that before tonight? Don't raise your hands, it's okay. Any other comments? Alderman Stauber.
Sort of in that vein, we're talking about covenants for various business parks, and I think the trend is clear that maybe we should consider things like pollinators in our business park developments. That we say that the covenants are 25 years old, and wouldn't hurt to, at least consider these types of amenities, I guess, to a public development.
Thank you, Alderman Stauber. Anyone else? Seeing none, city administrators update.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 quick things. First of all, earlier today, about 3:30, some of us met in the public conference room. A couple of members of the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee were there, and some staff members to review the responses to the recent RFQ for temporary economic development services. And I'll be bringing a recommendation to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for its next meeting. Also, to celebrate a little bit, I guess, for lack of a better term, we will have a special event coming up on April 3rd here in the community. You may recall that we worked really hard. We thank Karen Olson again for all her work. Tom was involved, Tom Turchi, Nick Com from Utilities. So many people are part of trying to gather the information, but we got the certified site status for that 120 acres roughly in the industrial park area. And the special event on Wednesday, April 3rd will be having dignitaries. People will be there from WEDEC and other folks to be kind of having a groundbreaking sort as we kick off what'll hopefully be a successful effort to find businesses now to build in that new 120 acres. So we're pretty excited. You'll be hearing more. Definitely invite you to be out there for that event on the afternoon of Wednesday, April 3rd. And then finally, just a reminder that we agreed at the last meeting that on Tuesday, April 9th, regular council meeting will be moved back a half an hour to 6:30, and at 5 o'clock, we'll be having a special meeting to talk about the 2025 budget. Get some discussion going. Staff will make a presentation of some of the key issues, and we'll be getting dialogue with the council to kind of start ourselves early in getting ready for next year's budget. That's all I have.
Thank you, Administrator Bard. Item J, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry. Alderman Tompkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a report from the Marshfield Utilities meeting that was yesterday. We are receiving a dividend from the Marshfield Utilities. It's a larger than what we've usually done because they are giving us 25% of the investment income. So I think it's about $490,000. They are requesting that we really look into and be careful that it is used for economic development because of how it's been, how their rate cases and the PFC have pretty strict guidelines for how things are. So that's just an update for that. We have lots of economic development that we are doing, and so it's not like we won't have anything to do with it, but just to give the council and staff an update on that.
Thank you, Alderman Tompkins. Any others? Seeing none, move on to item K, consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Fire, second by Alderman Varsho. Discussion, Alderman Werman.
Can I pull the minutes for item 6, Economic Development Board, February 1st, 2024?
Alderman Stauber.
Pull for separate consideration, Board of Public Works 9.3. So the authorized extension of contract for cleaning services at City Hall.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. I would also like to pull K91 from Board of Public Works for discussion.
Okay, first we will
Seek a motion on the others.
seek a motion on the others other than the ones that are pulled. Again, Alderman Fire, second by Alderman Varsho, are you still? Please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Then we'll start with Alderman Werman. Item 6, Economic Development Board, February 1st, 2024.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight 2 items in here for a quick discussion. Number 1 was the 205 fund balance. I saw that there was some back and forth on that. It looked like Steve was going to touch base with him. I believe the last meeting was a couple days ago. I just wanted to check, is that the fund that we voted on early in my council time to come to the council prior to being delegated to EDB, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's here's what it is. The money that we get from the dividend from Marshfield Utilities now goes directly to the council for its allocation. But ultimately, the 205 Economic Development Fund still is what it is. It's where money is housed for that specific purpose. The question has been whether or not the Economic Development Board has authority to make allocations from that and how.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. I did not get a chance to watch the video from the most recent one, and I saw the minutes weren't available yet. Did you have an update that you could provide the council while we're here?
Yeah, and the city attorney may wish to weigh in at some point here. But the question has been, and it goes back to when pickleball that project was recommended by the EDB for funding from the 205 Economic Development Fund. That request went to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. And by a 3-2 vote, they voted not to spend $50,000 from that fund. And that led to some discussion by Economic Development Board members as to whether or not they have some autonomy, some authority to allocate those funds without approval by the elected officials. And the city attorney weighed in at that point. Maybe I'll just let you expound on what you came up with to give back to the board.
I'll make it a short response for Rebecca Spiros's benefit, since she always complains about my long answer. So really, at the end of the day, the Common Council has control over assets and funds within the city, unless specifically delegating the authority to administer those funds. And it did not appear that there was any record of the Common Council having done that with respect to the Economic Development Board. So my view of that was that the Common Council ultimately would control the funds from that particular fund, although the Economic Development Board can certainly make recommendations.
There's a follow-up question. I see Councilmember Reigel has his hand up. There's a follow-up question that came from that then regarding the, it used to be called facade grant and interior conversion program, now being promoted as potentially building revitalization grant program, as to whether or not those allocations specifically for specific businesses need approval by the elected officials. And the city attorney has suggested that perhaps it would be good for this body to consider a resolution granting said authority to them so that they could look at the applications received and make those determinations. But that's still hanging out there, I think, at this point.
And I'll clarify that a little bit more since it was brought up. But ultimately, my conclusion is that that was the intent behind that one, that there was authority, implicit authority, but I did recommend that we make that more clear so that we didn't run into an issue. So that was expected, and there may be some revisions kind of coming down the line at some point.
Thank you. Anything else?
If we want to do Andy's
I'm
question.
sorry. Alderman Reigel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on that too, what Mr. Walcrum said, and just point out the fact that EDB's advisory is no different than any other board or committee out there. So it's not like they're being treated any differently than any other one. Every other board and committee does the same thing. So I just wanted to point that out so there isn't any confusion that EDB is currently being treated differently than any other board or committee. Every other board or committee as it stands right now is advisory, just the same as EDB is currently.
Thank you.
And then the one other item I had was the proposed community center project. So I just wanted to follow up on this. We as a council had a really hard time doing a lot of back and forth on sending a letter, crafting the letter appropriately to make sure that we didn't overcommit, et cetera, et cetera. So I did see that EDB also sent a letter. And I was just kind of curious in terms of those kind of subcommittees, like, is there alignment between them? Do they get to kind of provide what they want to provide? Because my thought would be, as a city subcommittee, it would just be concerning if they're giving direction on, hey, we're promoting, the Mill Creek Community Center, and then the city is coming back saying that, yeah, we're promoting that we are okay with a community center, but we're not committing to this part of it. So I just wanted to know if there's, I don't know how the subcommittees work there, if there's alignment, if there should be alignment, or if it's kind of like, hey, you operate on your own.
When I was first approached by the chairperson of the Economic Development Board, I think the thought maybe was that that letter would be representing her as the chair. But in some conversations, it was determined that it might be best for, rather than that, for her to be only writing such a letter if it was on behalf of the board. But your question, I think, is a good one. What would happen if the board showed support and the council didn't? That might appear to be conflicting. I don't know if it causes a legal problem or if it just looks kind of out of place.
Ultimately, the effect of doing that is that that body probably has the authority if it's within the realm of their authority. So, for example, you can think of another committee that had nothing to do with that. So what difference would it make if they made a statement? It probably would be argued to be inappropriate. It doesn't come under your guidance at all. When it comes to the EDB, I think that body, the way that this would work is that they have to, if they do decide to do something like that and bring a motion, and it's something that's passed as official action of that body, it would all be in the context of what their scope of authority is. So they couldn't commit to something because they have no authority to commit to anything without council approval. But if they said, we like this and we think we should move on or we support it, they probably have the authority to do that because it's under the guise of their authority in general. So what they're really saying is, we're an advisory board to the Common Council. We think this looks like a good idea. Of course, there's all these other moving parts that ultimately the Common Council control.
And one more thing of note, both letters were reviewed by the city attorney to make sure that we were not in any way, shape, or form committing ourselves or appearing to represent things that we couldn't do. So we went ahead.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, I knew that one was a time crunch, and I was just going to suggest if it was different, that in the future, we should find future alignment as long as we weren't stepping on anyone's toes. So thank you for the clarification.
Alderman Stauber?
Yeah, to take a half step back and kind of dovetail into Alderman Reigel's comment about the authority of the Economic Development Board, I kind of like the idea of treating that body more like a city department. In other words, if we come up with a budget, an annual budget, we stay within that budget, then the council really overriding a decision by the EDB might be the exception instead of the norm. So just a thought.
Alderman Wagner?
Thank you, Mayor. When we were in the negotiations with the utility about what share of economic development they should do, number one, the money was always intended to be for economic development and for no other use. The second thing is that Alderman Stauber's vision of this is the one that I endorse also, and that is the Economic Development Board is a branch of the city. They tell us what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and how much they want to draw out of the 205 or whatever for the year. And we basically confirm that or deny it, depending on what the project is or what our feelings toward it are. But by doing that, once that's done, they don't have to come back to us to draw money out of that account for any other things than that. They're going to be fine. And I like the way that works because it gives us, I think what sent terror through my spine in the last budget situation was what was going on with county deciding they were going to get into economic development all of a sudden in a big way. And what turned out from a $400,000 economic development budget, they were having people come before them and ask for money, and the commitments they were making were well over 1.4 million. So that I've listened to the arguments about giving the Economic Development Board more autonomy, and I look back at what happened when you do give them that kind of autonomy, or they think they've got that kind of autonomy. And I'd prefer the first way. I would prefer the city department model over that. So thank you.
Yes, Steve.
I just want to agree 100% too with Councilmember Stauber's understanding and interpretation. I think you're right on point. The question I think that the city attorney's been wrestling with is the idea, would it be potentially good for this body to give an indication through something that they are blessing, for lack of a better term right now, the idea of individual allocations being made by the EDB? Because I think otherwise, monies are budgeted to the EDB every year, and it's for, projects involving the Wenzel Family Plaza or Mackey or Main Street or other things. And they've always historically been spent as budgeted the same way another department would be. And I think that is a good model. This has just raised one more question that I think that the city attorney's been looking at to make sure that there's no question about whether those allocations are being, made on behalf of the council.
So we have a motion by Alderman Werman, second by Alderman Giles. Any other discussion?
Can we have Alderman Werman just clarify his motion? I don't think
Perfect.
it was from you pulling the minutes. We need to approve those.
So I guess the motion would be to approve the economic development minutes as written.
And are you in favor, Alderman Giles, as a second?
Yes.
All those in favor, please vote. Vote, sorry.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Reigel?
Yes.
Motion passes, thank you. Second item on the agenda is from the Board of Public Works. Alderman Stauber, authorized extension of contract for cleaning service at City Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. My computer just went into sleep mode. So the item that I'm discussing is PW 23-26. And during the discussion, the request from staff was that we extend the contract 3 years. And that would be a total of $51,552 based on $1,432 per month. So it exceeded policy number 4.810. And during the meeting, we were kind of doing the quick math, and we said, let's go with 2 years. And unfortunately, 2 years actually exceeds the policy limit of $25,000. 2 years would be $33,384. So I think in the interest of consistency and adhering to the policy, extending for 1 year for a grand total of $16,200 might be more appropriate. And then I'm also, and I will tag onto this, I think policy 4.810, even though it was amended in 2023, might be worth revisiting. That $25,000 threshold just seems like it's more of a encumbrance to expedient government than maybe it's worth.
We'll have Steve first and then Tom will go second.
Yeah, I know the question has come up before regarding the procurement policy. With professional services, I know that we have extended in the past auditing contracts, assessing contracts sometimes, where we're not required to bid them out on a regular basis, and not an attempt to subvert in any way the procurement policy, but I guess I would look to the city attorney to see if there's any concern about that, because that has been fairly common practice. We're not required to bid out cleaning services or auditing or again, assessing any particular timeline. And yes, it is true that they will ultimately exceed, $25,000, over a period of time.
So this is one of those things that's somewhat ambiguous. You have the policy in place. You also have what is really, and I'm going to deem this, this is attorney speak, but it's custom and usage. You've got an application of a policy. You have a history of sort of looking at that and interpreting it within a certain period of time. And so we've talked about this a number of times, and frankly, recently, I can't remember the specific circumstance, but where you renew a contract, even though probably, it's an indefinite period, you're not really sure how long it's going to extend. But so you've created sort of a custom to be doing that where you're not defining a specific set period of time. I think if the question is that what you want to do? That's for, I think, the body to adjust that policy, make a statement about that, and probably, create a new policy that's going to take into account that. It's going to draw that attention. But the fact of the matter is you caught that anomaly. I think that's true, but I think you've also have circumstances where this has been treated that way. Particularly, I know for years sitting here that you've looked at extending contract for specific professional services that when you look at it, technically you would have gone out with, or at least proposals, but you saw that limited period of time. This also takes into account the fact that there's some custom also with respect to professional services where bidding and contract approvals are somewhat relaxed when you're talking about those types of services where you've got a relationship with somebody, and so you're trying to keep that relationship moving forward because there's already projects in place. So you can take that into account, but I think if you're going to do it, you'd have to look at revising your.
Tom?
All right, I'm going to take and just read the one paragraph from policy 4.810, and it's under procedure. All financial, appraisal, engineering, architectural, development analysis, risk management, human resources, compensation, administrative, or cable television coordination services engaged by the city from an independent professional consultants or contractors in the amount exceeding $25,000 for an individual project or $25,000 annually for ongoing programs shall be subject to this policy. So this is an annual project that is actually under that $25,000 limit. So we're actually spending less than $25,000 annually. So you would have the ability to award that for a 3-year period.
Okay. So if I could, I might be misunderstood then. I thought that it was a continuation of services not to exceed $25,000.
Well, I'm just reading it word for word from the policy, so.
So what you're saying is it's each year you can spend $25,000.
Yeah.
It's not $25,000
And this is
umbrella over the 3-year period.
Yes.
It's each year you can spend the $25,000.
Okay. I guess if that's, I'm sorry, I have to do.
I was only going to say that that's correct in terms of the wording, but the last time you dealt with this, what we had was a situation where you're renewing a contract and it was for a period of time that was indefinite, it wasn't clear whether you were going to exceed that or not. That's what's specific to this issue, which Tom has addressed. And if that contract, as he's saying, is going to be under the 25,000, you don't have an issue under the policy. You have that other one that's ambiguous, where you're awarding a contract and it isn't clear whether it will or won't be. And that's where you go back to the custom and usage. And I think if the body's looking at being uncomfortable about that, then the answer is go and tweak that policy to talk about that specific circumstance. But I think Tom's correct here, and I didn't see that specifically in terms of what this particular proposal was. But that if you're under that $25,000 limit, then you don't have an issue under the policy for this particular vote. But it's more of that broader thing that's been raised before.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I respect the concern, definitely. This does lead to one more thing that I think we should look at, perhaps starting with finance, budget, and personnel and bringing it through the council, and that is possibly increasing that threshold too. And I'm not just saying it because of the conversation we're having right now, but $25,000 when this policy was put into place, because it's been $25,000 since I showed up in 2011, is not $25,000. It's 13 years of inflation. We have a hard time finding professional contracts where we're looking to get consultants and whatnot for less than $25,000. I really think that number ought to be closer to 40 or even possibly 50. We're not here to debate that now, but I guess I'm just making the point that perhaps that number needs to be adjusted because CPI has taken a toll.
So my motion then will be to support the Board of Public Works action for a 2-year period.
And Alderman Varsh, you're okay seconding that? Please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
And that motion passes with 1 nay. Item number 3, Board of Public Works, award bill for construction of pickleball courts at Brain Park. Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. I had a little confusion on this issue through Board of Public Works. During that session, I had asked if the lighting was included, which was an alternate on that bid. I understood that you had said yes, but after I went back and reviewed the video, I think you said no. So I looked a little more into it and I was a little concerned. I don't know what our total money raised for that is right now, but I looked and our estimated budget on it was like $650,000, which we're coming in significantly under that. So I found it odd that we were bidding the whole thing out if we didn't have that money. But then as I looked into the bid results, it looks like there's 2 contractors that if we go with just the base bid, one contractor gets it. If you go with the alternate, another contractor gets it. And what I noticed is if in fact we approve this at the base bid like it was shown, we all know the lights are going in. How is that going to be handled? Is that going to be handled as an extra through the construction project with that contractor? Because if it is, we're going to pay about $5,000 more to have that lighting done. So my question is, do we have enough to approve both at this time? And with the significant money raising that they've done, I don't think there's any question that $5,000 is going to be raised, and I'd really like to see the lights going in and save $5,000 in the process. So if we could maybe elaborate a little bit on how that works.
I see Justin at the podium.
Yeah, I'll address your questions as best I can. Last week, the Board of Public Works approved a bid from Marwood Construction for $508,475.83. Without the alternate included the lights, the light poles, the wiring, the control panel, the fixtures themselves. That approximate cost of that is about $80,000. Right now, with the donation from the friend, this pickleball group, we could not afford that. They don't have that $80,000 worth of money. They don't have that much money. They only have $400,000 to give us. They have some funds set aside for perpetual care or for maintenance, as well as a donor wall. They have to recognize all of the donors, and they want to buy a shed. So they have other expenses. And they said, maybe we can put lights in later. What is later? Maybe next year, maybe 5 years, could be 10 years. Either way, they don't have that money to give to the project. So even if we wanted to accept it, right now the city does not have those funds set aside. The budget itself, we budgeted $150,000 just to kind of redo the courts. It mutated into this pickleball complex, which we went out and asked for grants. We received a grant, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes for the budget resolution. We received one grant from the county for $25,000. We received a second grant from the Community Foundation for $10,000. So the city has about $185,000. When we factor in the donation from the pickleball group, that's enough money to do everything. That's additional things not in this contract, like windscreens, bleachers, benches, signage for the donors, a shed, those things that really weren't part of the contract because they have to be done separately. It's typical that we buy those types of things outside of it. So right now, we don't have enough money to afford the lights, nor are the pickleball group actually here. They're in Arizona or Florida playing pickleball, believe it or not. So we couldn't accept it. We do know if we would accept the lights, we would have been able to save some money. But once again, we didn't have that $80,000, or at least I don't have it from the city's perspective. And I was depending on the pickleball group to make that decision. And they said, we can't afford that at this point. So you are right. At a later point, we'll get lights. Whenever the pickleball group is able to raise $80,000. So they have to go back out to the community and ask for that money, additional money from other donors. So yes, unfortunately, we weren't able to get the lights in this project. And if we were, a different contractor would have gotten it. But unfortunately, they weren't able to get it.
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern was that we would be paying more. So as long as this isn't going to be done as a change order through a construction project.
It won't be part of this project with this contractor, no. The pickleball group have also already acknowledged that they don't think they'll be able to raise it in that kind of time.
Sounds good, thank you.
Alderman Werman?
Justin, if you could, for 1 second, I have two questions. The first one will be for you. The second one will be for probably City Attorney or Steve. The first question would be, can you just kind of recap real quick what the alternates were in the bids and why we selected the specific alternates that we did?
The alternates were the lights, and we did not select them.
It was only lights?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. That was it for you. Kept it easy today.
Yeah.
And then the other question was, we do have, we just reviewed this policy about selecting bids and having to take the lowest bidder. We talked through this pretty in depth last time. Does that bid with that stipulation include alternates? Because technically, I think the lowest bid would be the base price, to Mr. O'Reilly's point, is we could be putting ourselves in a pickle by selecting a contractor that, I did not even mean that pun, but I saw your smile and I caught it. I was like, oh, pickle, yeah, good. We could be putting ourselves in a tough situation by selecting a contractor based on their base price, knowing we have alternates out there that we ideally would like that are significantly higher than the next bidder. So I am curious if we know if that includes alternates.
Thomas at the podium.
And just talking to Justin, he bid the lights as a specific alternate to that contract to see if it would fit within the budget. We've done that on various projects that have been bid through the Board of Public Works or through public contract, like street projects. So should we put bid trees in, like 17th Street? We bid trees as an alternate to add 50 trees to that project. So you can do that, and you base it off your base bid, but sometimes if there's the dollars that are available, you could actually take the alternate and it could actually change your low bidder. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
I mean, my comment would be that would be appropriate as long as it's stated when the decision is being made that that's what you're doing.
We need a motion.
We need a motion to accept or not. Motion, Alderman O'Reilly, and would you please state your motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve as came through Board of Public Works.
Second by Alderman Fire. Please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. So we don't have to go to item L because everything has been motioned and passed. Oh, I did that right. Holy man. Item M, request to approve the same deal, trust me. Request to approve budget resolution number 06-2024, accepting grants, donations towards Brain Park Pickleball Project, presented by Justin Casperson, Park and Recreation Director.
Well, thank you. I think most of you know why I'm standing up here right now, and that's to accept the donation on behalf of the city from the pickleball group in an amount of $400,000. I mentioned before our budget was $150,000. We got a grant from the county for $25,000. We got a second grant from the foundation for another $10,000 that get us to about $185,000. To make up that difference between the bid amount that was accepted and getting the project done, the pickleball group went out and did some fundraising. I want to take this opportunity to not only thank the individuals on that pickleball group that went out and fundraised, but the individuals that gave money to it, as well as the businesses. Forward Bank was willing and gracious enough to be the naming sponsor, and they gave a large amount of money to the pickleball project. I hope it's because it's across the street from their bank, and they can look out there every day and maybe go out and play some pickleball. So I'm looking for approval of budget resolution 06-2024 in the amount of $400,000 to go towards the pickleball project.
We have a motion on the floor from Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Giles. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
I would just hijack the meeting for 30 seconds to just acknowledge that we do have a basketball team in town. The Marshfield Columbus Catholic boys are going to state. We're really hoping that both teams would have made it, but just want to wish that team good luck down in Madison this weekend, and hopefully they can bring back a gold ball. It would have been just wonderful to have 2 gold balls come back to Marshfield this weekend, but I want to take this opportunity to wish them good luck.
Thank you, Justin, and I'm sure we all agree. Item N, request to approve resolution number 2024-12, approving closure of TIF District Number 5, Mill Creek Business Park, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Good evening. I'm coming tonight before you to recommend resolution 2024-12, closing of Mill Creek Business Park. This TID was created in 1997. Its debt will be paid off in 2028, so there's an outstanding amount of about $181,000. It's important to note that at the time this TID was created, the base value was just under $300,000, and our last equalized value was $23.9 million. So in and of itself, a successful TID. The latest that we could close this TID is in 2030, but at this time, there is a sufficient fund balance in order to pay off the TID's remaining debt and other outstanding liabilities. If this resolution is adopted, there are some remaining steps to take. We need to send the resolution to the state, the assessor, and our other taxing jurisdictions. We'll need to complete a final audit, which is currently scheduled with our audit firm CLA for June of 2024. There are a couple of state forms that will need to be filed, and then once the audit is complete, we will settle up any residual increment with the other taxing jurisdictions should there be a surplus at that time. So with that, I recommend approval of resolution 2024-12.
We have a motion on the floor by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Werman. Alderman Wagner?
Yes, Jennifer, is there some sort of a prohibition when you close out a TID? We have the new assessed value of that, and that's what will go on the tax rolls next year. Are we penalized any for that first year? If it strikes me, there used to be a statute or a rule that said that you could only take credit for half of it in the first year after closing. Is that still correct?
Sure. And I've run through the calculation based on tentative information. It looks like we'll get to add about $60,000 of base value to our allowable levy.
$60,000 in base value in actual tax or in assessment?
A taxable assessment that we will.
So we can tax on $60,000.
Additional, right?
Okay.
Our allowable levy will increase by $60,000, roughly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
Yeah, and just to note, Jennifer, a couple months ago, we had that resolution passed. that allows us to keep one extra year of increment for affordable housing, and that we'll be hearing more about that as we go along.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item O, suggested items for further agendas. Alderman Werman?
Yeah, I just had one. I don't know if we could pull in Tom and the communications team, but prior to the primaries coming up in April, I was wondering if we could discuss the potential for optional signups for communication from your district alderperson. I've just noticed as I've been on, it'll be a year in April. I do not have a great way to communicate with anybody in my district unless I go to door to door. There's no email distribution list. There's really nothing. So I think that would be a great opportunity to, within the next month, work through the hoops of how we could do that as a voluntary sign up to hear from your representative. I think that'd be good to discuss before we get to that voting.
I'm just giving Steve a minute to write it down. Okay.
Yeah, no, I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not that fast, but thank you.
Just want to make sure.
It's more important that Jessica has it than I do, but I want to make sure I don't miss following up on this for you.
Correct. Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like us to relook at the policy that we adopted last year. It was 4.320. That is the dividend money. I'm just concerned because that policy, the money goes into the general fund, and I would like us to look at, and maybe if Jennifer didn't mind maybe presenting, if there could be a better way to make sure that that money is used for economic development, just so that we don't get in trouble in the future, it doesn't accidentally get spent on other things. It would just be good to have a discussion about that, so that would be my request.
Seeing no others. Item P, adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, claims for recovery of unlawful taxes, and closed session under Wisconsin Statute Chapter 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Possible development project in TIF District Number 13 and TIF District Number 14, 2 requests. We have a motion by Alderman Werman, second by Alderman O'Reilly. Please vote to go into closed session.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
We are in closed session. We will take a 10-minute recess. And we are out to item R, action on matters discussed in closed session if appropriate. We have a motion on the table of Alderman Giles. And Alderman Giles, would you please give us your motion?
Sure, I would make a motion to accept the tax agreement between the City of Marshfield and the Marshfield Clinic Health System.
Second by Alderman Stauber, and is that agreement with you? Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. And now I need a motion to adjourn the meeting. Alderman Rigel and Alderman Spiros, all those in favor, please vote.
Mrs. Spiros?
Yes.
And Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now,